And many of us we're sick of hearing that we're the silent majority. We don't want to be silent anymore. So what do we do? What can we do? Well, joining us right now is Mark Meckler. Now, he is the president and co-founder of the Convention of States. He was the co-founder of the Tea Party Patriots. And back at that time, Mark Meckler, I remember when I was working with Andrew Breitbart, who embraced the Tea Party movement like nothing else, nobody else I had seen. I remember interviewing you back then about this newfound fervor amongst conservatives who just don't like to sit around anymore and wait until Election Day. Well, where is that passion now, Mark, and do we need to reharness it?
Well, look, I think the passion's out there. I think the biggest problem that we see now, Larry, is that there's nobody in government or very few people in government that actually reflect that passion. In 2010, the Tea Party movement elected the largest swing class in Congress since 1938, and they promptly went and drank from the swamp and became swamp creatures. And so what we see when we look to Washington, D.C., and we're seeing this at an exceptional level right now, is Republicans that are doing nothing and, frankly, hardly even saying anything. So the passion's still out there in the people. It's just not in governance.
Well, and I had an open forum on this. I have an open forum every day on this program, Mark Meckler. That's the beauty of talk radio. And I said, what do we need to do? What do you think we need to do to stop being silent? And somebody called in and said, we need to start pushing the Convention of the States, and Republicans need to start pushing the Convention of the States. So that's why you're here. That's your new cause. How does the idea of the Convention of the States, an Article 5 convention, how does that factor into this in terms of preserving and restoring what we understand this country to stand for?
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways. One is our Constitution right now is most definitely at stake, because if you listen to folks on the radical left, and at this point the left is just the radical left,
yes,
they want to do away with our entire Constitution. They like the fact that we've slid away from the original interpretation of the Constitution. We've limited the power of the states and the power of the people, and they've increased the power of the federal government. The radical left likes this. They're statists. They're centralizers. Ultimately, in the end, at the root, they're Marxists. And so I think one of the things that's really important about the Convention of States is it's an opportunity to go in, to get the states together, to take power away from the federal government, to shore up our foundations, and to get it back into balance where the states and the people have more power than the federal government.
And you hear people, sadly, many Republicans who don't get it, don't understand what the Convention of the States are. They'll say things like, if we do that, we're going to have a second constitutional convention, and then Elizabeth Warren and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they'll hijack the thing and they'll rewrite the Constitution from scratch. How are they wrong about that, Mark?
Well, I think the best way to note that they're wrong is everybody on the radical left, and by everybody I mean everybody in the United States of America, is against this. 3 years ago, there was a press release put out by Common Cause and Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, two large Soros policy organizations. It was signed by every major leftist organization in the United States of America: La Raza, Planned Parenthood, Socialist Party of America, every public and private major employee union in America, and they all said, Convention of States, most dangerous thing we could possibly do. And then if you look at the right, on the right, every major conservative figure in the United States of America that's spoken on this, whose name you would know, has spoken out in favor. So the lines are very clearly drawn. The radical left is against this, and real conservatives are for it.
That's a great point. If they could hijack it and rewrite our Constitution in the style of Karl Marx, they'd be the first ones saying, yes, bring it on, and they're terrified of it. Just so everybody knows the details of this, in case they're still confused, when you have a Convention of States, you determine exactly what the agenda and what will be discussed and what will be debated at that convention ahead of time, and people can't come in and say, well, now we want to do this instead, right?
That's correct. And in fact, so far we have passed this resolution in 15 states. It has to pass through both houses in a state. It's been introduced in 49 states. It's passed 30 committee hearings. We've passed in one chamber or the other in 23 states, and 15 states have passed it completely. They've all passed the same resolution, which sets the boundaries for the convention. At the convention, we can discuss anything that would impose fiscal restraints, like a balanced budget amendment or tax limitations, spending caps. We can talk about anything that would impose term limits on federal officials. By the way, that's not just Congress, that's staffers and bureaucrats and judges, and we can impose any restrictions on the scope, power, and jurisdiction of the federal government. And those are things we need to do if we're going to get this government back into.
But if somebody stands up at this Article 5 convention and says, I move that we remove the Second Amendment from the Bill of Rights, they'll be laughed out of the room. It's not going to happen.
Well, then anybody from a conservative state could stand up, or even a moderate state, and say that's out of line, that's non-germane to this convention, and they'll be ruled out of order. And Larry, even if I'm wrong about that, let's assume that I'm wrong. I'm not, but let's assume that I am. It would take 38 states to ratify that. And that means it would take only 13 of the most conservative states in the United States of America to stop it. I've made this offer. I'll make it again here. I've made it to millions of people. If anybody can draft an amendment for me that they wouldn't like as a conservative, and then list me the 38 states that will ratify it, you can send it to me at mmeckler@cosaction.com. I put that offer out there to millions of people. I've never received one.
So, Mark Meckler, when you hear a Republican speak out against the Convention of States, saying that it's wrong, saying it's dangerous, saying it's something that we shouldn't do, correct me if I'm wrong, there's three options here. They're either operating in bad faith, they're ignorant, or they're benefiting from the status quo, and they don't want these changes.
I would agree with you, and frankly, I've seen all three of those. I've been in 48 legislatures in the last few years, and I've seen the bad faith. I've seen people who won't even look at the arguments. They won't even have the discussion with you. I've seen people who I think are benefiting from the status quo, for example, people who are anti-term limits or anti-balanced budget amendment. And I've seen people who are just plain ignorant, and they don't know, they won't do their homework, they won't read anything. So all three of those things exist among people who are allegedly conservative Republicans.
Well, the first I heard of this movement was on the Mark Levin show. From there, we've had regular conversations on this program with the late Senator Dr. Tom Coburn. And Mark Meckler is part of the movement. Those are three people that I think I'd be happy to get into the trenches with for a fight like this. So go to conventionofstates.com for more information so we can move this along here in Virginia and Maryland even. Why not? Why not get you? Unless you're in the conversation, unless you're trying, then you're not even part of the fight. Mark Meckler, beginning of many future conversations on this. I appreciate you joining us, sir.
Great to be with you. God bless you and have a great 4th of July.
You too. Thank you so much. Happy Independence Day to you as well.
Go to conventionofstates.com, press the button, sign the petition. More importantly, get 10 of your friends to do the same. When you sign the petition, then that sends a letter to your state legislator. You go on the list in their district as a supporter. We deliver those lists to the state legislators. It means something to them.